Your healthiest and happiest years do not need to be behind you, ladies, if you don't want them to be. And it's important to know that your brain has a default setting that pulls you towards your past. It almost makes you believe that your healthiest and happiest years are behind you. But understanding the mechanism is the first step to overriding it. Welcome to your daily hit of grace and grit, your quick dose of inspiration to kickstart your day. I'm Courtney Townley, and here is today's hit. So most women understand intellectually that chasing a past version of yourself is not a useful health strategy, because we all know that you can't really return to the past. You can't go back to a version of yourself you've been in the past. But man, we spend a lot of time doing that, right? Trying to do that. And I've long believed that when you spend all of your time trying to return to a past version of yourself, you really rob yourself of the opportunity of stepping into your possibility for the future, right? Like, what if your happiest and healthiest self isn't in the past? Like, let's just decide that it's not. Well, that reorients you towards the future. Okay, well, if it's ahead of me, give my brain the job of looking for evidence for that. So today, I want to give you a little bit of the neuroscience behind why we do that, why we constantly go back to our past, and we are often trying to chase a past version of ourselves, because once you do understand the mechanism, you loosen the grip that it has over you. So the brain has what researchers call a default mode network. We've talked about that many times on this show before, but it's a mental system that activates when you're not really focused on a specific task. And this system has a very strong tendency to run simulations based on past experience. And I think everything that I've learned about the brain over the years, the brain is always working in your favor on a chemical level. Because when the brain is running simulations on past experiences, it's just trying to replicate experience. It's doing it in an effort to conserve you energy. Because it's a lot easier to not have to think about recreating something, right? And just go off past patterning. So your brain is always trying to do the best it can for you. It just doesn't necessarily understand the whole scheme of things, right? So neuroscientists call this mental time travel. And while it's a remarkable cognitive capacity, it becomes a trap when we use it primarily to compare our present self to our past self, rather than to using it to imagine a future self. And this is the work I really encourage my clients to do. I'm always encouraging them to pivot away from the past and towards what I call the power vision. When you imagine yourself standing fully in your power as a woman, what does she look like? How does she act? How does she problem solve? How does she treat herself? How does she talk to people? How does she communicate? Right? This is ultimately the goalpost. We want to move our way closer to that version of ourselves. That's what we call the power statement, when you get really clear on that version of yourself. That is more impactful, way more useful to you in the realm of health and happiness than focusing on your past. Research from Dr. Tali Sharot at University College London shows that people who engage in perspective thinking, which is actively imagining their future, are more motivated and more resilient and more likely to take action towards their goals than people who primarily are always looking backwards. Right? And I think that's I feel that in my bones, because when I'm thinking about my future, I get really excited. When I think about my past, it often just feels heavy or like a regression, not progression. The future is not just where your goals live. It's where your motivation lives too. I always say, you've heard me say this a gazillion times, that motivation is something we work for, not something we wait for. And one of the ways that we can cultivate motivation is through that perspective thinking, looking towards our future, not back towards our past. So here's what this means practically. Every time you say, I want to return to some version of yourself, Your brain is running a backward-looking simulation. It's literally dialing down your motivation and narrowing your sense of what's possible. That's not what you want. We want to expand your sense of what's possible, right? So you have the power to shift that focus. There's that the two wolves analogy, like which wolf are you going to feed, right? The one that focuses on positive things in your life, or the wolf that focuses on all of the negativity and all the places you were wronged in your life. You have control over which wolf you feed. And I would say the same is true here. You have absolute control over where you spend most of your time and energy, focusing on returning to your past or moving towards something you really want in your future. I only see the latter as useful and productive. So shifting your focus even slightly towards who you are becoming, who you are committed and devoted to being moving forward, activates very different neural circuitry. So this isn't just a mindset shift, it's a neural shift, a neurological shift. So think of it this way: you can't drive forward, at least not safely, while looking in the rearview mirror, right? Not a good idea. And now you know why your brain makes it so hard to stop doing that. It's just a mechanism the brain has, and it does it to try to conserve you energy. So the question isn't ever, how do I get back? It's who am I committed to being moving forward? And how do I inch closer to that version of myself? Your brain responds very differently to that question. If this stirred something inside of you, imagine what a whole book of clarity and courage could ignite. The Consistency Code, a midlife woman's guide to deep health and happiness, goes even deeper into the mindset and practices that create real, meaningful change at midlife. Grab your copy today over at theconsistencycode.com and keep the momentum alive.